Brian tells us parts of the story, but there's, of course, so much that we already know that isn't in this letter. And it's the aftermath of what happened to Gabby. And the fact that Brian, in the aftermath of killing his fiancée, he's saying that he did so mercifully, okay, had all of these opportunities where he had a choice to do the right thing or to do the wrong thing. Many opportunities. And I was going through them in my mind last night on the ride home. I was driving home, and I'm going through the timeline in my head, trying to put myself, you can't, no one can put themselves in Brian Laundrie's shoes because you don't know what was going on in his mind. You don't know how close this is to the actual truth, but you can try to put yourself in his frame of mind in the aftermath of his fiancée being murdered at his hands. And I can't help but think about all of the opportunities that existed in the aftermath of this event happening in Wyoming. And all of the opportunities that there were for Brian Laundrie to do either the right thing or the wrong thing. I want to make this point to our audience, and then, of course, we'll bring in Brian Enton, and we'll continue on with our coverage and get to your #HeyJB, #HeyBrian comments. After this occurs, after Brian kills Gabby in a form of panic, he says, we're going to take him for this exercise. We are going to take this at face value. We're going to take this for what it is and just say that this is what happened to Gabby Petito and what happened with Brian Laundrie. Let's focus on what happened afterwards and the choices that were presented to Brian Laundrie. He has a choice of what to do with Gabby's body. There's the right thing to do, and there's the wrong thing to do. And this is going to be the theme of this. 7 instances. We're going to go over all 7. The right thing and the wrong thing. This is the woman you're supposed to spend the rest of your life with. This is the woman you're supposed to be with. This is the woman you've pledged to commit yourself to. Good, bad, and ugly times exist in relationships, and you are supposed to grit your teeth to get through all of it, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And this, of course, was something that occurred while on this cross-country road trip. But something terrible happens, and Gabby is deceased. Her body is there in the wilderness. Why are you leaving it? Why is it there? Why don't you retrieve the body? Why don't you return it? Why don't you bring it with you? Why do you leave Gabby Petito's body out there in the spot near where this tragic event occurred? Whether you believe it to be an accident or an intentional act, something bad and terrible happened here between these two. Why, if this is the love of your life, you say it even in this note that you write sometime afterwards, you say it in your final 8-page confession, if this is someone you love so much, you love them so much that you can't be without them, why don't you bring her body with you? Why are you leaving it out there? Is the first thing. So Brian has the opportunity to do the right thing or the wrong thing. The right thing is to take the body of the love of your life and do something with it and bring it with you. He does the wrong thing. He leaves it out there. That's number 1. Number 2, Brian, let's say, we're going to talk with Brian Enton about cell signal and maybe your battery being dead. But upon returning to civilization, if you will, you have the opportunity to contact authorities. As our commenter Elizabeth Gregory says, why not call 911? I just saw that flash on my screen because it has the hashtag and I can see them just very clearly here. Brian doesn't contact 911. He doesn't contact authorities. His choice is to leave Gabby's body out there and return home in the van. There's the right thing to do and the wrong thing to do. If this was an accident, why aren't you contacting authorities saying, in a panic, contacting authorities and saying, this is a tragic accident that occurred. My fiance, something terrible happened to her. She hit her head. She fell in the water. She's ice cold. I did everything I could to save her life. She's out there. I need help. Help, help, help. Brian didn't do that. The right thing would have been to contact authorities or get help of some kind. The wrong thing would have been to just leave. The wrong thing to do would have been to leave. He left. Instance number 3. Brian sends texts from Gabby's phone to her mom, and in the words of the FBI, deceives law enforcement. The right thing to do would have been to contact Gabby's family. The wrong thing to do is to try to cover it up. The FBI in January put out their notice, their final notes in this investigation as they closed it without criminal charges being filed, saying that Brian deceived law enforcement in the aftermath of Gabby's death by sending out these text messages. The right thing to do would have been to own up to it. The wrong thing is deceiving her family and deceiving law enforcement. Next point in the timeline. Brian returns home, still does not speak to Gabby's family. He returns home to Northport, makes the long trip back. That's a long road trip. You have a lot of time to think and determine for yourself what is the right course of action and the wrong course of action. This long road trip. And after all those hours on the road, returning in the van that you were on a cross-country road trip with the said love of your life, your fiance, that van, you return home, and after all of that thinking on the road, you still don't call Gabby's family, and you still don't contact local police or the authorities. Next point in time, Brian chooses to go on vacation to Fort DeSoto, the campground, with his family, as if things are normal, as if he's there at Fort DeSoto. As we heard from Cassie Laundrie, they were there having a good time with family, enjoying a beautiful Florida sunset, while Gabby Petito's family is suffering, desperate to try to get information as to where Gabby is. Brian is on a beach, kicking back and watching a sunset, spending time with family. Now he alludes in his note that he returned home to spend time with family, but to go just on vacation to spend it on a beach at Fort DeSoto campground, when you've already had all of these opportunities to do the right thing, once again, we have Brian Laundrie choosing between the right path and the wrong path, and he chooses the wrong path. Number 6, Brian intentionally eludes investigators as he leaves his home. As Northport police are starting to knock on that door in Northport and starting to investigate the disappearance of Gabby Petito, Brian eludes investigators, does not cooperate with investigators that are quite literally attending now, or attending, being on his block and going to his house. Instead, goes to the Carolton Reserve. And then lastly, Brian walks into the Carolton Reserve and claims his own life. The right thing to do would have been to turn yourself in. The right thing to do would have been to contact Gabby Petito's family. The right thing to do would have been to own up to what had happened. And he chose avoiding prosecution, avoiding the law, avoiding punishment, and he chose to claim his own life. Suicide is never the answer. Taking your own life is never the answer. And that was his choice of action. 7 instances, moments in time, and there's many more, but we just isolated these 7 to talk with you guys about all of these chances where Brian could have done something right. And every time he did the wrong thing.